The diner floated on the edge of the Clytherian Nebula like a relic of a forgotten dream, its neon lights flickering against the slow swirl of cosmic dust outside. Inside, the air shimmered faintly with recycled oxygen and the scent of fried synth eggs, coffee, and ozone. It was the kind of place that existed between destinations, where travelers paused not because they wanted to, but because the void between stars demanded it. Lyra wiped down the counter for the 5th time, though no one cared about the streaks on a place like this. Her reflection wavered in the chrome surface, brown eyes tired but alert, hair tied in a quick braid to keep it from floating when the gravity stabilizers hiccuped again. She was just a waitress, or so everyone thought. Just another human working a job far from home, serving beings older and stranger than anything she'd ever dreamed of as a child on Earth. When the door hissed open, heat rolled in with the newcomers. The sound that followed was not footsteps but the heavy, rhythmic thud of claws against metal. 4 dragons entered, scaled giants wearing adaptive armor that shimmered like molten glass. They moved carefully, folding their wings beneath cloaks that couldn't quite hide the glint of living metal running through them. The other customers, miners, traders, mercenaries, fell silent. Even the jukebox stuttered. Lyra straightened, clutching her datapad like a shield. "Table for 4, she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The lead dragon, massive and ancient, inclined his head. "Aye. Corner booth. And bring the strongest brew your kind makes." His voice vibrated the air, low and resonant, like the hum of starship engines. As she poured their drinks, she heard fragments of their conversation, war stories, old names, laughter that carried an ache. She had learned to listen without being noticed. They spoke of the Legion, of battles fought in the void before humanity had even learned to split atoms. When she set down the last cup, she noticed the mark burned into the dragon's forearm, 2 spiraling lines of crimson that pulsed faintly, alive. Her breath caught. She knew that shape. She'd seen it every day of her life on her mother's shoulder, inked deep into her skin like a memory she never explained. Without thinking, Lyra spoke. "My mom has your tattoo." Silence fell. The air seemed to tighten, thick with something ancient and electric. The dragon froze mid-gesture, his golden eyes widening. "What did you say, human?" She swallowed, heart pounding. "That mark. My mom has it. Right here." She pointed to her own shoulder. The oldest dragon rose slowly, towering over her. "That symbol is not worn by your kind," he said softly, yet his tone carried the weight of centuries. "It belongs to the Legion of Fire, lost to time." Lyra's pulse quickened. The diner lights flickered once, as if reacting to some unseen surge. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw the tattoo on his arm glow brighter. An echo that resonated faintly beneath her own skin. No one spoke again. The dragon stared at her as if seeing something impossible. Somewhere beyond the walls, thunder rolled, not weather, but the deep tremor of awakening machinery buried within the void. The diner never truly slept, but that night it felt hollow, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. Lyra sat in the staff quarters, her datapad dimly lit beside a half-empty mug. Her hands trembled no matter how still she tried to keep them. Every time she blinked, she saw those dragon's eyes staring back at her, golden, burning, filled with something between fury and recognition. Outside, the nebula pulsed faintly through the diner's viewing dome, casting red and violet reflections over the metal walls. Her shift had ended hours ago, yet she couldn't leave. Not after what she had said. "My mom has your tattoo," the words replayed over and over, like an old recording she couldn't delete. A knock echoed on the doorframe. Lyra looked up to see one of the dragons standing there, smaller than the others, though still enormous compared to her. He ducked beneath the archway to enter, his armor adjusting with soft clicks as nanoplates reshaped to fit the cramped space. "I am Kale," he said. His voice had the weight of old storms, but softer than the others. "You should come with us." Lyra hesitated. "Did I do something wrong?" "That depends," he said. On what you are. He led her down the dim corridor to the docking bay. The others waited by a sleek dragon warship that looked less like a machine and more like a creature forged of light and alloy. The hull shimmered with living veins of plasma, and faint glyphs burned across its surface, language that predated written history. The oldest dragon, the one she had spoken to earlier, turned toward her. "Show me the mark," he demanded. Lyra blinked, confused. "I don't have any," but then she froze. A faint glow shimmered on her wrist, thin lines twisting beneath her skin, shaping themselves into two spirals of soft red light. The same pattern. The same impossible mark. The dragons leaned in. A low hum filled the air, resonating deep in her chest. The mark responded to theirs, pulsing in rhythm, as though all of them were bound by the same living signal. "This cannot be," Kale murmured. The Legion's Oath Keepers were extinguished before humanity existed. The Elder's voice deepened to a growl. "Unless, the flame was carried forward." Lyra took a step back, her heart hammering. "What flame? What are you talking about?" The Elder's gaze pierced through her. "The Dragon Legion made a pact to preserve their essence should our kind ever fall. A code written in living DNA, hidden within the body of a chosen vessel." His nostrils flared, and a faint shimmer of heat filled the air. "Your mother bore the mark. Now you carry it." Lyra's voice broke. "That's impossible." Kale's armor emitted a sharp tone as sensors activated, scanning her body. The holographic feed that appeared in the air showed faint golden traces running through her bloodstream, energy filaments, coiling like molten threads. "It's not impossible," Kale whispered. "It's designed." The Elder turned toward the viewing dome, his wings flexing slightly. "The Legion's call has been silent for centuries," he said. "But now, because of you, it echoes again." Lyra looked down at her glowing wrist. For a moment, the world around her seemed to vibrate, the diner's power lights flickering. Somewhere in the depths of the nebula, something stirred, an ancient presence, shifting in response to her heartbeat. Lyra stood at the center of the dragon warship, surrounded by a dim blue glow that pulsed like a living heartbeat. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, shifting faintly with every vibration of the engines. She had never seen anything like it, technology so advanced it felt organic, as if the ship were alive and dreaming. The air smelled faintly of ozone and molten metal, and every sound echoed like a whisper from another age. Through the transparent canopy, the Clytherian nebula loomed vast and restless, a storm of color that devoured the stars. The dragons moved around her with silent precision, their claws tapping against the metal floor, their eyes gleaming with light that wasn't entirely natural. Kale stood beside her, adjusting the holographic controls, while the Elder, General Thrain, watched her with the patience of a being who had seen civilizations rise and fall. "You said your mother bore the mark," Thrain said finally. "How long has she had it?" "As long as I can remember," Lyra replied. "She never said where it came from. She just told me never to talk about it." Thrain's golden eyes narrowed. "Wise advice. That symbol has not been seen since the fall of Draconis Prime. It is the Oathkeeper's seal, the heart of the Dragon Legion." Kale flicked his wrist, and a hologram burst to life in the air, a recording of the final battle of the Legion. Massive dragons of flame and armor tore through fleets of synthetic war machines. Stars dimmed. Whole planets fell silent. And at the center of it all was a figure, human, slender, cloaked in light, fighting beside the dragons. Lyra's breath caught. "That's her. That's my mother." The hologram rippled as if reacting to her voice. The figure turned, and for a heartbeat, Lyra saw her mother's face, young, fierce, eyes glowing with the same spirals now burning beneath Lyra's skin. Then the vision flickered and died, leaving only silence. Kale's voice was low. "This cannot be a coincidence. The human woman who bore the mark fought beside the Legion. She must have carried the encoded flame, the bridge between our kinds. Lyra stepped closer to the holographic projector. You're saying my mother was part of this war? That she's not human? Thrain's tail scraped against the floor, sending sparks across the metal. Human, yes, but altered. She carried within her the last fragment of our kind's living code. You, child, are that code awakened. Lyra shook her head. That's impossible. I grew up on Luna City. I've never even. The ship shuddered violently, cutting her off. The alarms wailed. Kale looked up sharply. We're being scanned, from orbit. It's not a ship. It's planetary defense, something ancient. Outside, the nebula twisted. Buried beneath its layers, an enormous metallic structure began to awaken. Symbols, identical to Lyra's wrist mark, ignited across its surface, forming spirals of molten light. Thrain's voice dropped to a whisper. It hears her. Lyra's wrist burned, and before she could cry out, the markings spread up her arm, glowing brighter and brighter until the entire ship seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. Then, deep in her mind, a voice spoke, soft, distant, echoing from beyond time. The seal is broken. The Legion remembers. Asterisk. The nebula roared to life, and the warship trembled as the ghosts of dragons, made of energy and light, rose from the void, circling the ship in silence. The visions would not stop. Every time Lyra closed her eyes, she saw flashes of fire and wings, of cities carved into living crystal, of dragons flying through solar winds like gods among storms. She felt their voices in her bones, not as words, but as harmonies, vast and ancient, echoing through the blood now pulsing with faint light beneath her skin. The ship's medical scanners showed impossible readings, twin heartbeats flickering within one body, patterns of energy that shifted like living flame. Kale and Thrain stood in silence as the holographic analysis replayed her data. The display pulsed crimson and gold, tracing the same spiral symbol that had burned itself into her wrist. The mark is not ink, Kale murmured. It's bio-coded plasma, woven into her genome. Every pulse strengthens it. Thrain's gaze was unreadable. She is the catalyst. The one the old prophecy spoke of, the bridge between scales and flesh. Lyra clenched her fists. I'm not a prophecy. I'm a waitress who served too much coffee. The elder dragon turned his head slightly, the edges of his metallic horns glinting in the ship's glow. And yet the stars answer when you speak. The warship descended through a corridor of burning dust toward the ruins of Draconis Prime. The planet's surface shimmered with molten veins, the remnants of cities half swallowed by glass deserts. Massive skeletal frames of long-dead war machines jutted from the sand, their cores still humming faintly with energy. Lyra felt something pulling her forward, a pulse synchronized with her heartbeat. They landed near the remains of a colossal forge, half mountain, half machine. Lyra stepped onto the scorched ground, her boots crunching over centuries of ash. The air trembled, and lines of light began to rise from beneath her feet, forming a pattern that stretched for miles, the sigil of the Dragon Legion. Why here? She whispered. Kale's voice was reverent. Because this is where we fell. And where we swore to return. As they approached the forge's heart, a massive sphere of crystalline metal pulsed faintly. Lyra reached out without meaning to. The glow on her wrist ignited, bright enough to bathe the ruins in gold. When her fingers touched the sphere, a surge of warmth flooded through her, and her surroundings dissolved. She stood within memory. Dragons roared above her, hundreds, their wings of plasma cutting through crimson skies. A figure stood before them, a woman in silver armor, her eyes alight with the same spirals Lyra bore. Her voice thundered like a star's heartbeat, asterisk, if the Legion falls, let the flame pass on. Through blood, through time, through her. Asterisk. The image shattered. Lyra gasped, collapsing back into reality. The forge began to stir, gears turning for the first time in centuries. Thrain's deep voice trembled with awe. It begins again. Above them, in the fractured sky, orbs of light began to coalesce. Shapes forming, wings unfurling, the essence of dragons reborn from energy. Lyra's veins burned with their light. She looked up, her voice a whisper lost in the rising wind. "What am I becoming?" Thrain answered without hesitation. "Not what you were, child. What we were meant to be." The forge roared awake. Its heartbeat shook the planet, rippling through the molten sands and up into the skies where the ruins of Draconis Prime hung suspended in red light. Lyra stumbled back as pillars of fire erupted around her, forming spirals that twisted toward the heavens. Her body trembled, but she could feel no heat, only an overwhelming resonance, a vibration that seemed to answer something inside her. The glow in her veins pulsed brighter with every heartbeat until it no longer looked like skin but liquid gold flowing beneath glass. Kale's voice broke through the rising hum. "It's syncing with her, the forge recognizes her code." Thrain stepped forward, his enormous wings unfurling, scales glinting with radiant light. "She carries the flame of continuum. The blood of both worlds." Lyra felt the ground tilt. A voice, ancient and familiar, spoke from within the forge's heart, not in sound but through her thoughts. "You are the vessel of promise. The bridge between the first fire and the last dawn." She gasped. "Who are you?" "Cotharian." The name rolled through her mind like thunder. Images flashed. A dragon wreathed in starlight, wings vast enough to eclipse suns, his eyes molten and kind. Her vision blurred as the forge's core split open, revealing a towering figure of light and code. The shape was both dragon and hologram, its form flickering between energy and memory. Kale dropped to one knee, his voice shaking. "The High Warlord lives." Cotharian's gaze fell upon Lyra. "Your mother carried my essence through the fall of worlds. Through her, our kind survived. Through you, the bond renews." Lyra's breath caught. "You mean, she was part of this, to keep you alive?" The dragon's massive head bowed slightly. "To preserve what we once were, not as conquerors, but as guardians. The Legion was never meant to rule. We were meant to protect the flame, and you are its final bearer." Thrain looked toward the sky, where streaks of light began to move, signals spreading across the void. "He's calling them. The scattered legions, the sleeping cores." Indeed, one by one, lights flared across the black of space, dozens, then hundreds, each one responding to the forge's pulse. Entire fleets that had lain dormant for millennia now stirred awake. Lyra could feel them, massive dragon-shaped vessels stretching their wings of plasma, roaring across the stars toward her beacon. Her hands shook. "What if I can't control it?" Cotharian's voice softened. "Control is not your burden. Connection is." The forge shifted again, a surge of energy bursting outward. Kale shielded his eyes as the mountain around them split open, revealing a sky teeming with light. The dragons, real and spectral, descended like burning comets, gathering around the forge in spirals of fire. Lyra stood at the center of it all, her human form dwarfed by giants of flame and metal. And yet, she no longer felt small. The energy coursing through her reached out to them like threads of light, binding each creature, each spark, into one shared rhythm. For the first time in centuries, the Dragon Legion breathed as one. Cotharian's form flickered brighter. "The time of silence ends. The stars will remember." Lyra raised her hand, and the forge answered with a pulse that rippled across the galaxy, a heartbeat that would wake even the oldest sleepers among the stars. Light flooded the sky of Draconis Prime as the forge reached its crescendo. The world shook under the pulse of awakening, the air rippling with energy so dense it made the horizon bend. Lyra stood at the heart of the storm, her body glowing like molten glass. Her heartbeat had become the rhythm of the planet, her breath synced with the hum of dragon engines above. Around her, hundreds of dragons hovered in perfect formation, ancient beings reborn through her call. Cotharian's spectral form towered behind her, wings vast as the horizon. His voice rolled through the air, calm and thunderous. They are coming. From the far side of the nebula, the dark fleets emerged. Remnants of the machine collective, forged from the ruins of the war that once destroyed the Legion. Cold ships, black as shadow, moved like predators through the void. The Forge's beacon had awakened them too. Kale's sensors flared crimson. They're activating planet breakers. If they breach the atmosphere. They won't, Lyra said, her voice steady. Thrain turned to her, reading the certainty in her gaze. You cannot stand alone. I'm not, she replied, raising her glowing hand. None of us are. The Forge reacted instantly. Energy surged outward, linking her to every dragon in orbit. Through her veins ran their power, their memories, their will. The air shimmered as thousands of luminous threads connected them across the stars, a living network of fire and thought. When the machine collective's first barrage struck, the dragons answered with synchronized flame, light carving through darkness, plasma meeting steel in blinding arcs. Lyra's body shook with the strain. Every life connected to her became a note in a vast symphony, pain, hope, defiance. She felt Kale's fear, Thrain's pride, Kotharian's sorrow. The Forge's light consumed her, yet it did not burn. It transformed. She closed her eyes and released the flame. The explosion was silent, pure light expanding through vacuum, rewriting the physics around it. Machine ships froze mid-flight, their cores dissolving into waves of harmless particles. The energy washed over the planet, not as destruction, but rebirth. When it faded, the nebula shimmered brighter than it had in eons, its clouds rich with color and calm. Lyra stood where the Forge had been, surrounded by still air and drifting sparks. The dragons landed one by one, lowering their heads in solemn reverence. Kale stepped forward, kneeling. The Legion lives again. Kotharian's vast form began to fade, his voice soft. My time ends where yours begins. The fire passes to you, keeper of the bridge. Lyra felt tears sting her eyes. What happens now? Now, he said, as his light dimmed, you teach the stars to trust again. When silence fell, the Forge lay dormant once more, but peaceful this time. The war was over. The ancient bond between dragons and humans, once shattered, had been reforged through her. Later, in the orbiting diner where it all began, Lyra poured coffee beneath a calmer sky. Outside the window, faint streaks of dragons glided through the nebula like constellations reborn. She smiled quietly to herself as the door hissed open and new travelers entered, unaware that the Waitress before them had once awakened a galaxy.